So a lot of students come to the School of Engineering and they're really intimidated because engineering is hard. It's pretty funny when a student tells other students that their major is engineering, they're like, oh, like they automatically have a response because engineering really has a reputation for being really challenging. And it is really challenging, but not undoable. So students always ask me, like, is it the hardest major? For me, it would be the hardest major because I am not an engineer. My background is in the liberal arts. So for me, it would be an impossible major. But in the same way, my theater classes would probably be a real challenge for a fair quantity of our engineering students. So for the students who tend to find themselves in engineering, this is kind of their world and what they're interested in. So yes, it's challenging, but it's usually challenging in a way that's exciting for our students. But to help them be successful in that, we have a whole lot of resources. We have free tutoring, free small study groups that students can sign up for. They're going to get a ton of emails from both myself and Ed, who's our assistant director, offering them free spots in our group study groups. They really should be checking their KU email if they're not already checking their KU email. We always hear that students don't check their email very much. But that's a place where students can sign up. There are other opportunities for tutoring on campus, but all of the rest of them cost money. Ours is free. And by free, I mean, they've already paid it. It's a part of the services that they pay for as a part of being in the School of Engineering. So when students sign up for study groups, they're grouped by what class they want study groups for. But I also am kind of sneaky. I try to enroll them in a study group with people who live near them, because we know that if students kind of live near people that they're studying with, they're more likely to meet up with them and study more outside of class. So we do a little bit of social engineering. You'll notice that same thing with your students, that they're pre-enrolled. Students get pre-enrolled in their classes. If your student hasn't been through orientation yet, chances are very good they're already in some classes. The way that works is that I enroll the students in what they're qualified to take, but I enroll them in blocks. So your student might be like, it's so weird, this guy's in all my classes. That is not accidental, it is on purpose. Again, the more you get to know the people around you and the more you interact with one another, the more likely you are to study with one another. It's called cohorting. And I do cohort our students as I enroll them in the classes that they have. So they might be like, this guy in my floor is in 4 of my classes. Totally not accidental. It's by design. When your student comes, if they shift around all their classes, obviously they'll pull themselves out of that cohort. But it is something that we do try to kind of socially construct for them. The other big resource I want to make sure that you're aware of is our practice exam program. So in calculus, pre-cal, all the math, all the physics, all the chemistry, KU has what are called common exams. And the way that works is that the Tuesday night of a math exam, everyone on campus is a math exam. So the Sunday night before those exams, we host what's called the practice exam program. We invite students to campus on a Sunday night. We have a practice exam that they can't get anywhere else. So, you know, a lot of the Greek houses have old exams in their file cabinets, and students may have old exams that they're given, but these are exams that were created just for us. They can't get them any other way. So they take that exam for 30 to 40 minutes on their own. Then they work the exam with everyone at their table for 30 to 40 minutes, because third person teaching is one of the most powerful ways that we can study for exams. And then for the last hour, we have student organization leaders who come in and help them only in the places where they need help. So they're stationed all over the room. And if a student's just stuck on question 2, they just go to where we're working on question 2. So they don't have to go over the whole exam. If they're totally in trouble, then we have a special tutoring room where they can kind of set aside and go over the whole exam if that's something that they need. It doesn't sound that exciting. However, I will tell you that students who participate in the practice exam program tend to score an entire letter grade higher than students who do not. And it doesn't matter what their ACT was. You would think, oh, they have a 34 ACT, they were already going to be great. That's not true. All of our studies show that participation in this program makes a huge difference no matter how prepared students were for the class they were taking it in. So please help your students attend those practice exams. They will hear about it ad nauseum. We're real proud of them. It's the only program like it in the country, and we won a national award for it, so we're pretty pumped about it. So those are the resources that I want to ask about. I want to say again, you can put your questions in the chat if you're going to have questions. I will definitely open it up later and probably unmute you all. But if you have questions that come up while I'm talking, feel free to pop them in there so I don't overlook you and I don't forget to answer your questions. A lot of families ask about advising and how students are academically advised. Here in the School of Engineering, it is mandatory that students are advised every single semester. So they'll get actually a hold on their account. They can't enroll until they sit down and talk with someone, whether that's a staff advisor or a faculty advisor. Engineering is extremely linear, meaning that you have to take Calc 1 and then Calc 2 and then Calc 3. You can't hop around. There's some classes you can't take your classes out of order ever, which is really different than a liberal arts degree where you just kind of collect the whole set. Because of this, and because not all classes are offered every semester, it's really easy for students to get off track and add time to their degree. And they don't want that. We don't want that. Families don't want that. So we do meet with students every single semester to make sure that they're on track. We're going to ask them how they're feeling, what their mental health is like, whether they feel like they're succeeding in their classes, if they're still feeling positively about engineering. We're going to ask them all those questions every single semester. So at least once a semester, guaranteed, someone's going to hunt down your student to check in with them and see how they are doing. But that is not the only time that your students have access to advisors. They can meet with their advisor at any time. Most of them will be assigned their advisor the very first week of school. They'll see that person pop up in their Jayhawk GPS, which they'll get a lot of information about, and they can reach out to that person at any time. So they have access to them at all times. Summer, maybe not so much. Faculty in the summer, not as consistent, but during the school year, they're around all the time and they're really good about responding. So that's advising. The last thing I wanted to make sure I hit was involvement. We have so many student organizations that are really just specific to engineering, between 42 and 45 at last count. I really encourage students to get involved in that, especially since, I'll get your question about calculus in a hot second, especially since, oh gosh, I totally knocked myself off course. Anyway, they should get involved. A lot of students won't get involved because they think, well, I'm going to wait because I don't want to overwhelm myself in my freshman year. But all kinds of studies have shown that getting involved in a student organization is actually something reasonably, right? Don't be joining all of them and don't be doing that all the time. But getting involved in a student organization actually really, really helps you stay engaged. And that's the other thing I was going to say, especially because the first year of an engineering program is really theoretical. There's not a lot of hands-on engineering in the first year. Doing these student organizations is a great way for them to be able to actually like do engineering in a way that they aren't in their classes. So for example, Jayhawk Motorsports, students can join that as a freshman. So yes, they might be just taking calculus and physics and chemistry in their first year and maybe not a ton of engineering, but then they go and they're working on the motor car with seniors. They're getting their hands dirty. They're getting to do engineering. It really, really helps students kind of stick with it as far as being in the major. So we really encourage students to get involved. To that end, the students will be getting an email probably today or tomorrow from Ed, who's our Assistant Director for Retention, inviting them to a session just like this, but with student organizations, and it's next Sunday at 3. So if you will kind of nudge your students to join that, we'll have all kinds of student leaders there to talk about what kind of groups they can do, why it's important to get involved. Some of our students were super involved in high school, some of them were not, but it is different than in high school, right? It's not a situation where they have to be doing it all the time. Most of our student groups only meet, once a month or once every other week. So not super, super active. So those are the things that I wanted to make sure to cover. You can unmute yourself to ask questions. You can put it in the chat. I'm going to answer Victoria's question first about AP scores. And then feel free to just poke more questions in there. I almost guarantee someone will ask about computers, so I'm going to make a note to talk about that in case anyone's curious. My son got enrolled. Victoria's, yes, I believe it will be recorded. Victoria's question is, her son took AP, but his scores aren't back. His scores don't come back until the middle of July. How do we handle this? That is an excellent question. So for like most of our students, they will have gone through orientation before AP scores post. So when that happens, we will reach out to them as soon as we receive their AP scores. They can always reach out to us beforehand because they get the scores before we get the scores, but it's usually only about a day or two later. So when I get those scores, I reach out to students and say, hey, you got a 5 on the AP Calc exam. You can take Calc 2. Here's the procedure for that. So the way that works is on August 2nd, I think is the day they're going to reopen everybody's registration. On August 2nd, they'll reopen it and students can shift their schedules around. In most cases, if we knew your student took an AP exam, we tried to leave the space where calculus would go easy to switch, so we wouldn't have to change your whole schedule. The biggest difference will be for aerospace students. So if your student is an aerospace student, there's actually the only major where students can't take the freshman class unless they're in calculus, so or further Calc 2. So if your student is an aerospace student and they test into calculus, we might be a little more aggressive with switching the schedule around. It won't be as easy as just popping calculus where pre-calculus was. We have staff here all the time that can help with that. We will still have the ability, like we do in orientation, to actually do it for the students, so they're not in there worried that they're going to accidentally drop a class, or we'll sit with the student while they do it if that's how they prefer to do it. But they will be reached out to us by us to say, hey, here's the thing. We do recommend that if students get a 3 on their AP exam, that they think real hard about moving forward into Calc 2. The reason for that is that to get a 3 on the AP exam, students only need to answer about 60% of the questions correctly. And in our experience and the research that we've done, those students don't tend to do real great in Calc 2. Calc 2 is the hardest of the whole calculus sequence. And for most students, it's the hardest math class they'll take as an engineer. So to go from brand new incoming student to Calc 2 can sometimes be a bit much for the students who have a 3 on the AP exam, the AP calculus exam. So they will get a customized email from me that's like, you scored a 3. Here's my advice. You scored a 4. Here's my advice. So they will get a whole, probably too much information because, you know, emails. They'll get a whole piece of information from me about what to do next once their AP scores post. Similarly, if your student had AP scores in history, English, political science, we asked them about that when we advised them. And in all cases, we try to avoid that thing. We didn't put them, if they have history credit they might have coming in, we didn't put them in a humanities class because we wanted to make sure that we didn't end up having them take a class that they didn't need to take. So we have tried as best we can to prepare for those. They don't come till middle of July. We'll be here when that happens. Next question is best laptop for engineering software, size, brand, video card. So the feedback that I've gotten from students is that it is easier to be an engineering student with a PC, that most of the software that students use in class is really written for a PC. There are workarounds to be able to use it with a Mac. Some students are just gung-ho Mac users and they don't want to use a PC, but it can lag, it can be a little inconvenient because those programs weren't written for a Mac. But if they're really hardcore Mac users, we have a 24-hour computer lab that they can access that has all of the software preloaded on it, so they don't have to buy any of that software. So if they really find themselves just hardcore Mac users and they don't want to get a PC, we have a plan for that. As far as size and brand, I would say something your student can carry around easily. They're going to want to be able to take it to class. good memory is really, really important. These software systems are kind of hogs when it comes to memory. I always caution students not to break the bank on this computer, that sometime between now and about their junior year, they're going to figure out what they're really, really passionate about. Maybe it's game design, and maybe it's cybersecurity. Maybe, you know, there's a whole lot of different things that students will do with various kinds of machines, and they will have various needs. So there's a good chance that the student will be interested in something a little bit more serious tech-wise by about their junior year. So it doesn't really make sense to break the bank as a freshman. So buy good memory, buy a decent video card, something they can carry around, something that carries a battery, like that holds battery pretty well is a good idea. I would stay away from a Chromebook because they don't run a lot of the programs our students need to run. So those are my thoughts on computers. Practice exam program. Is it specifically for engineering students? No. We only advertise it to engineering students because it's a sponsored program by, Smith and, that's horrible that I can't remember. We haven't had one in a little bit because of the coronavirus. We've had them all online. So those are sponsored. So we actually only advertise them to engineering students, as far as like we nag engineering students the most, but they are open to any student at the University of Kansas. And the reason for that is that we want them to simulate a test environment as closely as possible. So the whole point of the program comes from the athletics saying that you should practice how you plan to perform, right? So students sit in their room and they study, and they're maybe peeking at the key. That's really not a good recreation for how the exam is going to be. And what we found is students would get into the exam and they would freeze because there were all these students. It felt weird. It got them nervous. They would get like test anxiety. So the whole point of this program is to be as similar to a real test as it can possibly be, so that they practice not just knowing the content, but getting those jitters out. So for example, the calculus exam, that course is enrolled, students enrolled in that class are about 60% engineering and 40% other STEM majors on campus, but we tend to get about 80 to 90% of the enrollment for the class that attend. It's huge. When we do math, it's so big, we have to do it in 2 sections, and we order about 200 pizzas and feed them in between. So that's my actual favorite test tonight, is when we do math. When do the engineering students move on campus? I don't know. It will vary depending on what building you're in. I believe students in the self-engineering learning community have the opportunity to move in a little bit earlier. You should definitely look at your housing contracts for that. Is there a cost to the various software needed? As I mentioned, not necessarily. Students may decide that they want to purchase various software pieces, but everything that they're using in their class is available wherever they are. They can go to a lab. They can, we have a virtual lab where they can just key in with their single sign-on and use the software via the cloud. Some students will just go ahead and end up buying software just because they want to play with it, and it's faster when it's actually on their machine. But for the most part, they will not need to purchase any sort of software. All right. Is 10 minutes really enough time to get between buildings? We were told yes, and it's okay to be late to class if you do take classes only 10 minutes apart. So part of that is true and part of that is not true. Most of the buildings at campus you can get to in 10 minutes. There are some exceptions, but when we build your student schedule at orientation, we actually do look at where all their classes are and whether old folks like me could get from A to B. We ask students if they've got any mobility concerns that make them concerned about not being able to get somewhere in 10 minutes. But for the most part, yes, you can get just about anywhere on campus in 10 minutes. There's some far buildings over by the student union where it would take you maybe a little bit longer. It can be okay to be late to classes. Every once in a while you run into a professor who's a real stickler about it. They should communicate early that that is the case. But we are watching as students enroll. The only way that that could become a problem is if students start to change their schedules around a bunch on their own, because then there's no one looking to make sure that they're able to get from hither to yon. Surely you've heard of KU calves. KU sits on a giant hill. And so students do a lot of like up and down over the hill. They have the KU calves to show for that. Okay, next question is it viable for students to be able to have additional majors or minors on top of their engineering course load? Yes, you can do anything that you want to spend the time to do. So Jody, I see you, and I will get you in a second. They will have anything that they take the time to do. So if your student decides that they would like to double major, that's doable, but it will add time. Engineering majors have the most hours of any majors on campus. So a typical KU degree requires 120 hours. Our lowest program requires 128. So they're already taking a little bit more of a load every semester. Engineering students are also, however, most likely to bring in a bunch of credits. So they may not really be worried about being able to cram it all in. So it just kind of depends on your student and what they want to be doing. We always push students, if they want to do a minor or additional major, to think about the why. If you're doing, for example, a business minor because someday you'd love to start your own business, well, there's no entrepreneurship class in the business minor. So you might be better off taking entrepreneurship classes than trying to take the 6 specific courses that the business minor requires. So we really encourage students, if you're thinking about a minor or another major, what are you hoping to get out of it? What's the value to you? What do you want to use it for? And does it require finishing the entirety of that major or minor and adding that time? For some students, the answer is absolutely yes. For some students, not so much. Jody, it looks like you have a question.
Sorry. Yeah. Hi.
That's okay.
Hi. So I'm a KU grad, so I kind of know my undergrad was at KU, but I know the campus. Mm-hmm. My son is in mechanical engineering. He refused to live in the that's where they take classes. Yeah. The engineer. He didn't want to be in South Hall. He's gonna be in Downs Hall. Oh, and that's great. Pretty close, yeah. I think.
Yeah, it's right there.
Do you think there'll be other students in Downs Hall that are mechanical? Probably.
Yes.
And how would they connect? How would they connect?
Yes, that is a great question. So the self-learning community fills very fast. It is only 2.5 floors. So because of that, there are engineers everywhere. We have a huge group of engineers in Ellsworth. We have a large group in Downs. They're everywhere. And the only building we really don't get a ton of engineers in is GSP, which is good because it's really far from everything that is engineering related. But for the most part, our students are kind of scattered all over the place. Wendy, what you got for us?
Hi there. We just had our orientation the other day, and it's just like 45 minutes. So there's not a lot of time to, because you're doing your schedule. And so I was the one that asked about getting to between the classes within 10 minutes. We were super concerned that would be a difficult thing to do, especially getting from like Wesco to Eaton Hall. I'm a KU grad myself. So I wanted to find out, because we only had 45 minutes, he had to get plugged into some stuff. I know we have like till Monday to make any changes. How do we do that?
Awesome.
And then also, we didn't get time to discuss, he wants to also do the MBA add-on. So we were trying to integrate something like economics and his humanities, things like that. And we didn't even get to discuss that. So what can we do?
Both really good questions. If your student has changes that they want to make to their schedule, your student's schedule stays open for about 48 hours after they've been here. So they can go online to enroll and pay and change their schedule willy-nilly. I'd really encourage them to involve someone in that. So every department has a staff person who can help you with that. If you email me, I'm going to put my email in the chat. I can help connect them with someone. Mondays are the only days we don't have orientation. So that means some folks are trying to take some time off on those days, but we will help you get settled. About the MBA, nothing is different in the freshman year to take the MBA. They don't actually start working towards that program until late sophomore, early junior year. So Probably telling us about that would have gotten him a happy thumbs up, but not a whole lot of change in his schedule because it's pretty much the same in the freshman year. But he definitely should tell his advisors. His schedule locks on Monday. It won't lock until usually the end of the day. But if you get there at 9 o'clock and it's not working, reach out to me and I'll help him get it opened back up. No problem. Okay, let me go back because I missed some questions. Orientation, my son signed up for an online class. Yes, there are some classes that are online. Many of them have always been online. So for example, psychology. Psychology is a giant class. It's got a lot of students in it. And it has been online. The lecture for that class has been online for the last 5 years. So that is not new. That is not COVID. That's just how it's offered. So the way that works is they do the lecture part online, but their discussion is in person. We were directed to not have online classes, to be completely back to the way that fall is. But I know that some departments didn't really take that to heart. Where possible, we are trying to avoid online classes for exactly this reason. We're all tired of online, and your students are super tired of online. So we are really urging them to not. If the choice was between not getting in the class or taking it online, then they're probably in it online. But some of the classes, this is just kind of how they've been offered forever. That's not forever. 5 years is not forever, but in KU time it is. So that's the way that the class is offered. Usually there's like an online and then an in-person aspect to it as well. How soon are summer internships available? Whenever students are able to get them. So we host a career fair in both September and February where students can come in, meet employers, shake hands, hand out resumes. We really urge students to start going to that as freshmen. I will tell you that the chances of getting an internship as a freshman, unless you know somebody, is rough. It's rough because you're like 0% an engineer at that time. But a lot of our students have connections or a friend of a friend who are able to help them get internships. We want students to be doing internships as soon as they can, but typically it starts right after the sophomore year. Okay. Does Precalculus count towards the degree? That is an excellent question. No, it does not. About a third of our students who are enrolled in engineering did not get the requisite score to test up into math. We went test optional this year, and so while that was really great for helping students get admitted and find their way into engineering, the math department needs proof because they're math and that's what they like. So the ways that students can qualify for math are either through a standardized test like the ACT or SAT, incoming college credits, or to take the Aleks Exam. The Aleks Exam, I'm gonna find the link right now. The Aleks Exam is a standardized math placement exam that students can take. They can take it now. It is free. And I always tell students, take it as soon as you can because you're not getting smarter at math over the summer. Math is a muscle, and if you don't use it, you lose it. So we really urge students to get in there, take the Aleks Exam, kind of see where they're at. Unfortunately, yes, I will answer that question. Unfortunately, the Aleks Exam sometimes can unnerve students a little bit, but the good news is that they can take it a second time. A lot of students think that they'll say, oh, I took calculus my last year of high school, and while that is awesome, that will not let the math department put them in Calc or Calc 2. They have to have something that shows that they're ready to be in the class that's standardized, not a grade, because grades can vary quite a bit from high school to high school. And we want to make sure we don't want to put students in a class where they can't be successful. So if you have a high AP, if you get high AP score, if you get dual credit, you're golden. If you have an ACT or SAT, which you would require 28 on the ACT, I want to see it's a 660. Let's look. They have to have a 660. on the SAT to test depth into calculus, or they can take the Aleks exam, or they can start in Precalculus, which does not count towards your degree. But if that's where your student needs to be, it's really better for them to be where they need to be than to push to try to get in calculus. I always get asked, what if someone cheats, like they had their brother take it for them? Well, that's a real bummer, because they're going to get into calculus and they're going to be not great. They're not going to be in great shape. So we really urge students, we'll catch you up. We have ways to get you caught up, and it's probably going to involve summer school next summer. But we would rather catch you up in the summer than have you be still behind because you failed a class and now you have a GPA problem. So yes, if you are coming in with JCCC credits, just transfer them here. No problem. You don't need to take the Aleks exam. However, I will tell you, for students who are enrolled in Precalculus right now, you do have to show it to us. So we're going to ask to see that. A lot of students are just pulling it up on their computer. So like, here's proof of my enrollment. When they do that, we'll get permission to get them into their class for fall, but they're going to have it here before the first day of school. So it's really important, as soon as that grade posts, they get it sent here. Otherwise, math will dump them, and that is sad. So, okay. Let's see. Does every student take the math placement exam? No. There are engineering programs that do it that way. We don't. So if your student tested up into calc and everything's right as rain, move on forward. No reason to take the Aleks exam. How soon should a student begin the process of inquiring about international study, and who should they talk to about this? Right away. They should talk to someone right away, because engineering is very linear. There's depending on the major, there's one semester where it can go. And ideally, we're going to shove some things around to make sure that they can go where they want to go. And that it really varies. So we have all kinds of programs where students go to a school that's really good at engineering, and we have an equivalent class they can take and everything's fine. But sometimes students don't want to go to those schools. They want to go to a random school that we haven't maybe sent a student to before. And in that case, if we haven't kind of prepared for that, it's very possible for them to get behind. Some students, they're like, I don't care if it takes me 5 years, I want to study abroad. And employers love when students study abroad. Engineering is very global. Employers love it. So it's not a bad investment to spend a little bit of extra time to be able to do that. But it's good to be intentional, right? If you decide to stay extra time, that's fine. We want it to be intentional. We don't want students to be in a position where they're stuck being here longer because of a decision that was made. So our contact over in International Studies is Charlie, and I can't remember Charlie's last name right now. Charlie is around all the time here in engineering, and we invite him to everything. He tables at everything. So if you see, the students will see him tabling at every event they go to, all through Hawk Week, they'll see him. Charlie, what's Charlie's last name? I'm apparently on the wrong website. So they will see Charlie, and they should start asking questions early and often about that. All righty, students, I don't see any new ones. Lots of questions about the math placement. While we're talking about math, we can talk about English. If your student scored a 26, let me make sure I'm right. If your student scored a 27 on the ACT on the English portion, or a 650 on the SAT, they're actually exempt from the first English class. So if they don't already know that, they can also be sure not to take that first English class. That's one their advisor really will catch, so long as their scores are here. Some students didn't even send in their scores because we were test optional, but that also means we can't see any of that stuff. So, Jody, I don't know if you're still hand raised or hand raised again, so I'm going to go ahead and call you.
Hand raised. I'm sorry.
That's okay. 4 on the AP English, yes, get you the credits that you need. There are 2 different. There's Lang and Lit and Comp. The first one that students get gets them out of the first one A 5 on either of those gets them both. So that's happy news. Theoretically, a student with a 5 on the AP exam in that would never have to take another English class again, which some of my engineers are pretty pumped about. All right, Jody, you're up.
I have 3 brief questions.
I'm gonna take notes.
One is I was told there's some one-to-one tutoring in Bailey Hall, the education building. And second one is my son is going to do the work study very flexible as a personal trainer. Would that be okay? And the third is how do they figure out if they want to be a dual major with the biomedical and the mechanical? Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so first question, yes, there is tutoring in Bailey. It is offered through the School of Education. And so those are students who are practicing to be teachers. So yes, they can absolutely participate in that. That isn't through us, but they, again, we're throwing tutors at them left and right. Work study, it's awesome for students to work if they want to work. We really urge students to not work any more than 10 to 15 hours a week, just because the academics are pretty rigorous. But it is a great idea. There are a ton of jobs on campus. I don't know how many of them have posted yet, but if you go to jobs.ku.edu, we post student jobs there all the time. And everybody wants to hire work study students because of the way that they're funded. So should have no problem getting a position as a work studies student. And it's a great idea to do that. On campus is best if you can do it. Dual major, specifically, you talked about mechanical and bioengineering. So we don't have a bioengineering undergraduate program. We have a certificate, and students in mechanical and chemical are probably the 2 most likely to do those. We also have what's called a 4+1 program with both mechanical and chemical, where students basically get their bachelor's degree in 4, and then that 5th year, they get their bioengineering master's degree. So that is something, again, there's a mechanical and finance 4+1, that's a master's in finance. That is something, again, that they really don't start focusing a whole lot on until the end of their sophomore year. So they'll take some classes and decide if they think that's really something that they want to do. For a lot of students, they'll take that first intro to bioengineering class, and they'll either really like it or they really won't. And if they really like it, cool, they can move forward. But if they really don't, then they've met an elective for their major. So the whole point of the classes that they take, the electives they take, is to figure out, like, do I like this thing? In a pretty risk-free environment. You take one class and you hate environmental studies, cool, stop taking those classes. But in the meantime, you've met an elective that you were already required to take. So every once in a while, we'll get a student who wants to double major in engineering, 2 different engineering types. Sometimes that makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. So for example, it doesn't really make a ton of sense for a student to double major in civil and mechanical. Most of the classes are kind of similar. It just depends on what a student wants to do. But we have all kinds of students who major in computer science and an engineering discipline, because the future of engineering is really programming based, and they want to have a whole lot more programming. So yes, if they know right now that they want to double major, we need to start talking about it from the moment they step on campus, so we can increase the probabilities that they will finish in a timely manner. If they change their mind, no big deal. We'll just not do that. All right, Wendy.
Hi. You mentioned earlier about psychology, that it's online, and he was enrolled in that. How do we tell if they're in the discussion? I only see 1 class time listed on his schedule.
Yeah, the 1 class time you see is the discussion. The lecture is asynchronous, so they do it at their own pace.
Oh, okay. Okay, good deal. And then if he does want to make a change, because we have till Monday at 9:30, but you said really it's end of the day, but there's nobody he can call and talk to. We just have to email. Is that correct?
I show up here. I mean, you can call me. My direct line, I'll put it in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
They can call me. I show up here at about 8. please do me this special favor of only calling the one time. Sometimes folks will call me about 5 times in a row, and if I'm not answering, I promise it's because I'm probably in a meeting or meeting with a student. And I really do try to preference students that I'm working with, and not kind of blow them off. So that is my direct line to my office. And like I said, I show up here 7:30, 8 o'clock each morning. Happy to help out with stuff.
Okay.
Yep.
And if he's computer science, but he's also interested in learning about civil engineering. What do you recommend to those kids? Like what do they need to do?
Usually we'll put them in both of the freshman classes. So we'll have them take ECS 168, which is the programming class, and we'll have them take CE 191, which is the introduction to civil engineering class. So they can kind of explore both of those options. They can be in multiple freshman engineering classes. Some of my undecided students are in like 3 because they were like truly undecided. They know that they want to do something engineering, but they're like, but I like planes, but I like computer programming, but I like bridges. So it's not uncommon for students to be in a few freshman engineering classes if they're truly undecided, because that's the easiest, lowest risk place for them to find out that they're interested in something or not. Pretty much by the end of the first semester, they have a good feeling of where they want to be there. All righty. Is computer science a major part of the engineering school? Yes, it absolutely is. It moved to the School of Engineering in the 1980s and has been here ever since. You were told your son can choose a major in mechanical and biomedical. We do not have a biomedical engineering bachelor's degree here, but we do have the 4+1 program, so students can get the master's with the bachelor's. The reason why we don't have a bachelor's degree in biomedical engineering, in case you're wondering, is that NACE, which is kind of the National Association of Career Centers for Engineering, they have found that students are typically not super employable in biomedical engineering with just a bachelor's degree. They really need a master's degree or higher. So our program is really set up to get them the knowledge that they need and the employability that they need. So that's kind of what that 4+1 program is there to do, is to help them be ready to actually go be employed in biomedical engineering. So that's what that program is. It is technically not double majoring because the end result is a master's degree in biomedical engineering. Okay. Jody, did you have more questions? Okay. What sort of classes do you recommend at a junior college? It kind of depends on when they're taking it. I would encourage students to knock out things like general education requirements. Let me pull up the KU general education is called the KU Core, and I just put the link to that in the chat. Some of the parts of the KU Core students will meet without doing anything extra. For example, goal 1.2 is quantitative literacy, which is math. We got math covered. You got to take a lot of math to be an engineering student. But another one is goal 3H, which is humanities. There are no 3H's in engineering because we're just not humanities. That's not what we do here. So some of the classes they will have to take like out in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. Some of the classes they will meet as a part of the requirements that they have. These classes that are not met by their major are great candidates for your local community college. It's a great way to save money. No matter how ahead students are, I often encourage them to do their first summer after their freshman year, 1 or 2 classes. A, it's a great way to save money. B, your first summer home's a little weird. It's never like they think it's going to be, like all their buds getting back together, because everyone's had a year apart and they've kind of grown apart. They've done different things. So that first summer is a really great time for students to work a lot, make money for school, or to take classes at their local community college. So I frequently talk to students about doing that in the summer. What KU core classes? Can KU core classes be covered in study abroad? Absolutely. Both because they are classes that would have counted here, like We have students who go to Cambridge, for example, like England. If they take a Shakespearean class, it's the humanities no matter where they took it. But for students, if they do a semester-long study abroad program, they automatically meet goal 4.2, which is global diversity. So yes, study abroad can meet lots of KU core courses or recommendations. Printable recommendation of classes to take at a junior college. We don't really have that. I would, because it varies from major to major. It's just not the same in any two majors, what we would recommend. English is always a great bet if your student's not done with English. Most majors except architectural engineering students won't meet a 3H through their major, so they can go ahead and take a 3H. Most majors will not meet a 4.2 within their major, so that's another safe one. So 4.2, 3H, English, those are all pretty safe. But things like communications, there are several majors that meet that through their major because you do a lot of presentations and engineering classes. So that's kind of three safe places. If you go to the KU Core website, you can kind of check that out. The math ACT score that's required for calculus is a 28. To take chemistry, they need a 26. So those are both things they can hit by taking the Aleks exam. Gosh, I want to say it's a 76 they need on the Aleks for calc and a 63 to get into chemistry if they have a major that requires chemistry. Is there a printable document that shows all the mechanical engineering classes in 4 years? Yes, there is. If you look at the engineering website, we have not put up the most recent one because we're getting ready to copy this address. We're getting ready to put up a whole new website, and in the new website, we're not allowed to post PDFs. So we are actually rewriting our entire curriculum guide to be reader friendly for accessibility. So this one that I just put in the chat, oh, I didn't send it to everyone. I just sent it to one person. This one that I just put in the chat is last year's curriculum guide, but none of the majors really changed that much. But this wouldn't be incredibly helpful. And that's actually all of the majors. Yes, you pass out of chemistry if you have an AP score of 4. I believe it only requires a 3. Let me double check my memory on that, but I'm pretty sure it only requires a 3. Yep, 3 gets you Chem 130. A 5 gets you both Chem 1 and Chem 2. That's exciting. Okay. Jody, do you have a question? Your hand is raised. Okay.
Yes, I actually do. I'm sorry. I'm asking.
That's okay. That's okay. Hit me.
As far as your KU core classes, they're going to be different in every engineering major, you did say?
Yeah, they do vary quite a bit. So for example, like architecture students have to take kind of a bunch of history of architecture classes. Well, no other major takes those. So they would meet their 3H because they're taking history classes, which are humanities. So they vary from department to department. But that link I just gave you with the curriculum guides, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, it tells you exactly which ones they can choose and which ones they're already taking so that they don't have to guess at it.
Okay.
Yep.
And we can call you with, because my son has a couple of AP classes we're waiting on. Like psychology, and he's got like 2 other ones. I don't know. Hopefully they would fit somewhere into the. My last question is, how many credit hours per semester would an engineering student average?
Excellent question. We urge students to enroll in between 15 and 17 hours of credit each semester. It is our experience that students who start slow, sometimes students will say, oh, well, my mom told me not to take a whole bunch of hours because, you know, whatever. In our experience, students who start slow tend to have a hard time ramping up. So what I always tell students is to think about those credits as money in the bank. If you're going to have a low hour semester, let that be your junior year, because the junior year of the engineering curriculum is the most challenging. So we really want to see them in between 15 and 17. Additionally, a bunch of our students have scholarships. Scholarships at KU require that they finish 30 credit hours a school year. So if they take 12 in the first semester, that leaves 18 for the spring, and that's nobody's idea of a good time. So summer for hours, yes. Someone asked, can they use summer towards their scholarship? Yes, those hours have to be here at KU. They can't take hours at a community college to count towards their scholarship. So it would count for the year prior. So this year, coming year's freshmen, their classes for summer of 22 would be counted towards this 30. So yes, they absolutely can use summer to try to hit that 30 if that is a concern. For sure. Did that get your question? Okay. Wendy, did you have another question?
Yeah, some of the classes that they can take while they don't go to their actual like major, it still can go towards their 120 hours towards a degree. An example would be like the intro to civil engineering. Mm-hmm. Even though he's a computer science major, if he chooses to take that, he can still use those credits right towards his degree.
Oh, you mean if like he changed his mind?
Yeah.
That would depend on the major. So computer science wouldn't use CE 191. Okay. So in that case, it wouldn't be applied. But for example, chemical engineering does use other engineering. So let's say a student's deciding between chemical and computer science. Chemical engineering would use that EECS 168 class as an elective in the major. There's just a little variation from major to major. For the most part, the freshman year is pretty identical across the board. But sometimes when students find out that 2 hours might not count, they're reticent to take it. I always tell students it is much better to spend tuition for 2 hours to see if it's something that you really want to do than to get 15, 20 hours in and find out that it's not something that you want to do. So in many majors, they can use their freshman classes across them. But in some majors, it's just not. That's not really something they do a lot.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Oh, actually, the number of classes or hours in the summer. Students, there's a limit to how many hours students can take in each semester. The summer limit is 9. Summer is half as long as a regular semester. So 9 hours in the summer would be the equivalent of 18 hours in a regular semester. So 9 is our limit. Students can petition to take more, but they have to be really stellar students for us to do that because we want them to be successful. In the regular school year, the limit is 19 credit hours. And again, they can petition to be allowed to take more hours than that, but we just look at how they're enrolled. Do international credit hours count as KU hours? It depends on their program. If the student is enrolled in a program that is an exchange program, meaning that we have equivalent classes, then yes, they are counted as KU classes. Because in those programs, they're actually enrolled at KU, but take the classes somewhere else. Some programs are not exchanged in that same way, and they will be very you will know which kind your child is in because it will be very clear to you. Those sometimes do not count as credit hours. They come in as transfer hours, so it just depends. For the purposes of scholarship, they will always let your international class, if you study abroad, they will always let those count towards your scholarship hours. All right. Jody, do you have another question? Or your hands in the air like you just don't care? Okay. All right. Well, this this is the end of our time together. I'm happy to hang around if you've got more questions that you want answered. Feel free to shoot me an email. Email really is the best way to reach me, especially during the week, because we are in orientation all day, every day, welcoming your students and getting them enrolled. Monday is kind of when we're trying to catch up with that. So email is really the best way to reach me. But if you have a student who needs a schedule change, go ahead and make that call on Monday, and we'll try to see what we can make happen. So yeah, if you're done with me, I'm done. That is the whole show. How do they sign up for study group? Great question. They will get so many emails from me. Please have them check their KU email address. It is a really easy Google form, and then we'll just pair them up with someone. We will open that up probably about 2 weeks before school starts, because we love for them to be able to start meeting that second week of school. All right. I will hang here. If you don't have anything else for me, have a great rest of your day. We will be doing another one of these. So obviously, if you feel like you need to come again, feel free. But if not, I'm so happy that you came, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. Okay.
I have a quick question. I'm Jody.
Hi, Jody. I feel like we're friends now. What you got?
I have a million questions.
That's okay.
I heard there's an MBA program. What did you call it? An add-on MBA?
Yeah, it's a 4+1.
4+1. Okay. So they couldn't technically do biomed and the master's in 5 years, could they?
You mean the finance and the biomed?
The mechanical engineering, biomed, and master's in 5 or 6 years? No. Okay.
No, and they wouldn't want to.
Okay. Okay.
By the time they got into their junior year, they would probably know which way they want to lean. If they have to choose, I would typically tell a student to choose the bioengineering one, because a lot of their first employers will pay for them to get an MBA if they want them to have an MBA.
Wow. Okay.
And that's something that they actually, it's kind of better to do when you've had some work experience. So if they have to choose between those two, I would do the bioengineering program, because you can get an MBA anywhere, but not every school has engineering.
Now when you say bioengineering, is that the same as biomedical engineering? Is that the same?
Yes, ours is bioengineering. It's much more broad, but students will really specialize in what they're interested in as far as being biomedical versus other kinds of bioengineering. Like we have a researcher in the bioengineering program, for example, who makes fuels out of algae. That is bioengineering, but it's definitely not biomedical. So students will get the opportunity to kind of focus on the thing that they want to do there.
Now, is there pre-classes to get introduced to the biomedical?
Yes. Yes. Every major that students commonly do it in, there is like an introductory class. And we also have the certificate program, which the first one is always the introductory class. So they know that that's the thing they want to do. And then there's a sequence of classes that they take. The bioengineering certificate, for the most part, doesn't add credit hours to either mechanical or the chemical engineering program. So a lot of our students will do them concurrently at the same time.
Okay. And then they have this, what's it called? The class that's seminar classes that, and will any of them have a dual thing, like a biomed or a bio researcher, or are they going to strictly be from like the mechanical, civil?
They'll talk about it. So what's your student's major right now?
Definitely mechanical engineering, and probably he wants to get involved with the motor cars. He's a car extraordinaire right now. Yeah. And he knows a lot of, can take a car apart and put it together already. It's pretty amazing. However, we went to when we did our tour with the assistant dean, we went up to the biomedical. Now I work in the medical field, so I kind of was more interested than he was. And he's like, Mom, I was actually pretty interested in that. They were doing a knee replacement, like they were tweaking.
Oh, you went to Dr. Molesky's lab.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So, and I challenged my son, and I think they knew I was a medical major, both at KU and I got a master's in the same thing. But I think he might, you know, who knows where he'll go with mechanical, but I know mechanical is where he belongs. So
there's a pretty, they spend time talking about all of the various applications. Mechanical is just a really broad kind of engineering, and our students end up kind of all over the place as far as what they do. But they'll spend time on each of those major areas, and bio will definitely be one. Dr. Molesky actually teaches one of the introductory mechanical classes, so he brings them into his lab, which you saw that day.
yeah. Okay.
And
good.
Dr. Fries, who is the chair of the mechanical engineering department, she is a biomedical person. She's actually engineering bone, which, you know, we don't really have a good replacement for bone right now. You have cadaver bone, but no real artificial replacement for bone. So she's doing all kinds of stuff with that, with the spinal reconstruction. And so he will get his fill of bioengineering if that becomes a thing that he wants to do. But we also just got a bunch of kids working in the motorsports lab, just building cars all the time. So he'll have tons of opportunities to do those things.
Oh, good. That's excellent. And he wants to join the car club right away. And
But he should look at the solar car too, for various reasons. One, it's just really cool and it's kind of the thing of the future, but also because they're raising money to go to Australia to race it in a year or two. So
what is that? How can he do that? I'm sure
solar car, he can join it just like the motor car.
Solar car.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Wendy, what question did you? Oh, sorry.
I just have one more. Then, as far as getting the certificates, he'll learn about that freshman year. He'll learn about the certificate programs.
They will hear all about it in all their freshman classes.
Okay. Thanks for your help. That's really helpful. Great.
No problem. Have a great rest of your day. Wendy, what can I answer for you?
Yeah. Hey, thanks for staying over extra.
No problem.
Because we kind of walked away from our enrollment orientation a little bit let down. So that's why I had a couple questions. Sure. We had actually spent quite a bit of time looking at alternatives to oral communications and psychology. Mm-hmm. Gavin came in with a lot of college now credits, so it opened up room. He was hoping, he wants to do computer science with a potential, the MBA, which we really need to sit down, I think, with somebody and talk. Everything's been so virtual and all that. But so he was trying to do like economics, he was trying to do political science, some things like that. And in that 45 minutes, the whole schedule got rearranged. In the end, he got put in oral communications and psychology. And we walked away, you know, I went to the parent session where it was like, hey, have your kid take things they're interested in and all of that. And we walked out in 2 classes he's not interested in, and we're spending $1,800 to take them. So that's where I kind of wanted to see, like, his advisor had said, oh, don't worry about the 10 minutes. Because he was looking at, how am I going to get, you know, from Buting to Eaton and things like that and not be late. And we were told, don't worry about that. And he is worried about that.
Of course he is. Okay, so Wendy, is your student around today?
Unfortunately, he's not here right now. And I work tomorrow. I'm going to try and call you between patients myself. I'm in healthcare myself. So
sure.
We're a little stressed about it, I'm gonna be honest, because we walked away not with what he wanted.
Sure. Hold on 1 second. I want to look at something real quick before can I
and if there's other parents who have questions,
can I keep you after class, Wendy?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Anyone else have a question before we scoot?